by V4 News, Global TV, मलनाडु टीवी, न्यूज गांव से, संवाद सरोकार न्यूज, organ donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to bring and enlighten
Growing
you
businesses
about
need a
the current
hosting solution
affairs.
that is
And
powerful
today
yet
we are going to discuss a very current topic which everybody wants to know. But before that, we would like to inform you that today is a Nagasaki Day. 75 years back
V4
today on
News now.
19th August 1945, at the United States dropped atom bomb over the Japanese
V4
city of
News now.
Nagasaki. The bombing killed approximately 80,000 people. We pay our condolences to all those who lost their life and hope that no nuclear weapons will be used in future. One more thing we would like to say on this forum, we would like to appeal for help for the Kerala people. The Red Cross Society has appealed that they need the following supplies to help the victims of the air crash, landslide and floods in Kerala. The items are baby food, biscuits, bed sheets, woolen sheets, toothpaste and brush, sanitary napkins, mask and sanitizers. And the appeal has been sent by Red Cross Kerala State Chairperson Justice Kumari A. Lakshmi Kutti and Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, former Cabinet Secretary, Government of Kerala. And they requested that this should be put on this show because this show is watched everywhere in Kerala as well as all over India and globally. So please be in touch with the Red Cross Society either locally or to the Kerala and do whatsoever you want to do the help those victims who have lost their lives in landslide, the floods, or the recent day before yesterday, the hell day air crash. Now, today's topic is new education policy. Education Education is our passport to the future. For tomorrow belongs to the pupil who prepare for it today. Education is the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at a school or university. Education gives us a knowledge of the world around us and changes it into something better. It develops in us a perspective of looking at life. It helps us build opinions and have points of view on things in life. People debate over the subject of whether education is the only thing that gives knowledge. Education began in prehistory as adults trained the young in the knowledge and skills deemed necessary in their society. In pre-literate societies, this was achieved orally and through imitation. Storytelling passed knowledge, values, and skills from one generation to the next. As cultures begin to extend their knowledge beyond skills that could be readily learned through imitation, formal education developed. Schools existed in Egypt at the time of the Middle Kingdom. Plato founded the academy in Athens, the first institution of higher learning in Europe. The city of Alexandria in Egypt, established in 330 BCE, became the successor to the Athens as the intellectual cradle of ancient Greece. There, the great library of Alexandria was built in the 3rd century BCE. In most countries today, full-time education, whether at a school or otherwise, is compulsory for all children up to a certain age. Due to this, the proliferation of compulsory education combined with population growth, UNESCO has calculated that in the next 30 years, more people will receive formal education than in all of human history so far. The National Policy on Education, NP, is a policy formulated by the Government of India to promote education amongst India's people. The policy covers elementary education to colleges in both rural and urban India. The first NP was promulgated by Government of India by Prime Minister Mrs. Indira Gandhi in 1968. The second by Prime Minister Mr. Rajiv Gandhi in 1986. And the third by our Prime Minister Honorable Mr. Narendra Modi in 2020. The new policy proposes for the globalization of education from preschool level to secondary level, along with a 100% gross enrollment ratio GER in school education till 2030, and further raise GER in higher education to up to 50% by 2025. The education policy intends to raise the higher education gross enrollment ratio, including vocational education, from 26.3% in 2018 to 50% by 2035, and objects to include 3.5% crores new seats to higher education institutions. The 10 plus 2 structure of the school curriculum shall be changed into 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 curriculum structure corresponding to ages 3 to 8, 8 to 11, 11 to 14, and 14 to 18 years respectively. It will comprise of 12 years of school education and 3 years of nursery and preschooling education. Affiliation of colleges is to be phased out in 15 years, and a stage-wise mechanism is to be established for granting graded autonomy to colleges. Process such as online courses and digital sources research funding, improved student services, etc., credit-based appreciation of MOOCs shall be undertaken to ensure distance learning is in parity with the highest quality physical study programs. The globalization of education to be assisted with the help of both institutional collaborations and students and faculty mobility, and allowing entry of top-ranked universities to open campuses in India. The NEP recommends the establishment of an institution for the preservation and translation of various cultural languages in India, namely the Indian Institute of Translation and Interpretations, IITI, and the National Institute for Pali, Persian, and Prakrit, for the strengthening of languages like Sanskrit and all languages departments in HEI, and making the use of mother tongue local languages as a medium of instructions in more HEI programs. Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi said the new national education policy focuses on how to think, while the education system till now in the country emphasized on what to think. He also said that there were no major changes in the country's education system over the years. The Prime Minister made these remarks while delivering the inaugural address at the conclave on transformational reforms in the higher education under national education policy. Now, to discuss this new education policy, we have a very elite panel with us. All educationists, top educationists are with us, and we would like to hear from them what they think about this new education policy, and then only we can reach to an inference how is the new education policy. Now, my first guest today is Professor Dr. P. Subramania. Professor Dr. P. Subramania is the Vice Chancellor of Mangalore University. He is having more than 3 decades of experience in teaching, research, and administration. He did his MCom from Mangalore University in 1982, securing first rank with gold medal. He obtained PhD degree from Mangalore University in 1992 in the area of consumer behavior. He worked as professor, trainer, and consultant. He published 46 research papers in national and international journals of repute. He did postdoctoral research at Nottingham Business School, Nottingham, Trent University, England, on HRD policies and practices. He also did a cross-national study of India and Britain under the Commonwealth Fellowship Scheme during 2001-2. He received an international award entitled eLearn International Award 2003 from Scotland, UK, for his best research paper on trends and status of corporate e-learning and Indian experience. He also received the prestigious Devang Mehta National Award for Best Teacher in Human Resource Management in November 2009. He is down to earth, ready to listen, and eager to implement. Welcome, Professor Dr. P. Subramania, on our show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, thank you and good morning, Dr. Subramania. Professor Dr. P. Subramania, being the Vice Chancellor of very reputed Mangalore University, you might have gone through the new education policy. Everyone wants to know what is there in this new education policy. So we would like to know the new education policy from Professor Dr. P. Subramania, please.
Yeah. Good morning to all my distinguished fellow panelists. As you rightly observed, uh, we had what you call 1968 education policy, later on 1986, and during 1992, there was a program of action by slightly modifying then existing policy. Then after 34 years, we have got the new National Education Policy 2020. Fine, all these days, the philosophy was continuity with change, because the best practice of the earlier years must be continued, no doubt about it. But as far as new education policy of 2020 is concerned, it is not merely a continuity with change. I observe or I perceive a radical shift or a significant departure from the previous national education policies, because there is a significant shift from Lord Macaulay's idea of imparting education in India by giving a lot of importance to English language and producing only clerks working for somebody else. But now the biggest question before all of us is the existing higher education institutions and the philosophy and all the policy postulates are giving or declaring that a particular candidate is only qualified, because the universities will conduct examinations based on a given curriculum, based on a given pedagogical structure, based on the particular quality and the mode of instruction. Examination will be conducted, scripts will be evaluated either digital or offline, whatever may be the mode of evaluation. And on the convocation day, the university will declare in the presence of all dignitaries saying that Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so has been examined and has been found fit for decorating herself or himself with this kind of degree, with this kind of CGPA. Fine, he or she is qualified. No doubt about it. But the question is whether that candidate who is qualified is also competent or not. To me, it appears that qualification is not just equal to competency. What we teach in the classroom is not being practiced in the corporate sector. What they practice in the employment domain is not being taught within the four walls or even outside the four walls. There's a strong disconnect between the higher education institutions imparting so-called quality education on the one hand and the employment market employing these people later on. The question is, we are focusing only on education and employment, forgetting about the much sought after another E called employability. My assertion or my conviction is, in India, there is no unemployment problem provided you are employable. Therefore, the biggest question addressed by the new education policy 2020 is qualification is not enough. If you are qualified, it is not enough. You must also be competent. Competency is made up of 5 ingredients. The first one is K, second one is A, third one is S, fourth one is H, the last one is V, Panchamam Karya Siddhi. K stands for knowledge. What kind of knowledge? Domain-specific, application-oriented knowledge. Whether the current existing the educational system is imparting this kind of education, mostly not. The second one is A, positive mental attitude. Normally, the students will come out with a kind of excuse saying that it won't work, sir. They should think how to make it work. They need to develop a kind of open mind. Now, that kind of openness is required in exploring knowledge or in laying your hands on innovative spheres. It is missing because students suffer from 3 things. One is student disengagement. Second one is cynicism. The third one is skepticism. It can be overcome only through instilling what you call a positive mental attitude. That's A. Third one is yes, that is skill mix. Skills upgradation is required. My question is, India is rich in terms of human resources, but the question is, are they truly resourceful? No, they are not. So it means there is the problem of de-skilling problem. They should be upskilled. They should be right skilled. Therefore, National Skill Development Corporation of India is talking about upskilling Indian human resource. Therefore, skills upgradation assumes a lot of significance. Then comes YECH. YECH means habits. Learning habits acquired within the portals of the university or the higher education institutions must be portable or marketable. After completing a particular degree program, whenever the student leaves the portals of the university, he or she must be able to carry forward those habits acquired in the education institution to the workplace so that they will be transformed into work habits. Therefore, positive result-oriented work habits are appreciated by the employment market. Then the last one is V. V is nothing but, as there is a holy scripture in the Bible which reads like this: values left in our children touch their destiny more than valuables left to them. Therefore, K, knowledge; A, attitude; S, skills; H, habits; V, values. These 5 ingredients will make up what you call a person competent. Therefore, it is not enough if you are qualified. Therefore, 3 things are very, very important as advocated by National Education Policy 2020. Imagination. In the next sequence is creativity. The next one is innovation. Therefore, we are saying goodbye to memory-based rote learning. That is the major emphasis given by New Education Policy 2020. And New Education Policy 2020 is also based on ideological underpinnings and a holistic context, because it is strongly embedded in the Indian ethos, philosophy, culture, legacy, and value system. Because a lot of importance is given to Indian languages and Indic knowledge systems. Therefore, the Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, talked about what he called Atmanirbhar Bharat. New Education Policy 2020 is very much in tune with Atmanirbhar Bharat, because you have to transform the students from job seekers to job creators. As he rightly pointed out, it is not the question of what to think. The biggest challenge is how to think on the sound lines, because 5 W's and 1 H matter a lot. It means what, where, when, who, why. All these 5 W's are available today in our Google. Therefore, knowledge is available in the Google. But the question is, how do you put this knowledge into practice? How do you understand the ground realities? How you are thoroughly grounded? That's very important. Therefore, according to new education policy regarding the school curriculum structure, formal education will begin at the age of 3. Then there is a significant shift from 10 plus 2 to that of what you call 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So in the college education, there will be continuity of 4 years of education. Then the question is, extensive nationwide consultations have taken place before bringing out this policy. Therefore, humongous efforts have been put in here for the first time in the history of formulating education policy in India. So the philosophy is deprivation to development. Then moving away from herd mentality to values of curiosity and imagination. We have to develop the inquisitiveness of the child. That's possible. But what we are telling at this point of time is our education highways must be free from unnecessary roadblocks, speed breakers, and toll booths. No doubt about it. Of course, this new education policy 2020 is giving us what we call Midas golden touch, characterized by modularity, interdisciplinarity, diversity, accessibility, affordability, equity, flexibility, access, quality, and sustainability. This is what we say education ecosystem as defined by the new education policy 2020. The learning life cycle of a school-going kids is poised for a transformational 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, punctuated by fun, arts, skills, mother tongue exposure, modularity, and academic curriculum minus heavy school bags. So, in this context, this is definitely an egalitarian education policy. We must note that it is the first to be formulated by a BJP government and the first in the 21st century. Then bringing children from ages 3 to 5 years within the formal education system again for the first time in the Indian subcontinent, ensuring curricular continuity in the last 4 years, another distinguished landmark. Then vocational education along with internships from class 6, unthinkable in the yesteryears. Then medium of instruction at least up to class 5 in home language or mother tongue or local language or regional language wherever is possible. That's a kind of disclaimer. And introduction of 4-year undergraduate degrees with options for entry and exit at various stages. Academic credit bank so that credit transfer is possible. Then renaming MHRD into Ministry of Education. That is the easiest possible thing to happen. Then student learning outcomes, not outputs. 4-year integrated B.Ed programs. Therefore, a lot of importance given to the teacher education because Acharya Devo Bhava, because teacher is important. He is the nucleus. He can make or mar the quality of education in the Indian context. Then higher education institutions should emerge as differentiators and not just aggregators. Therefore, they should be change agents and not just grueling approval engines. That's what happened in the past. Therefore, National Research Foundation is expected to provide a level playing field for all the education institutions, including private education institutions, deemed to be universities and private universities. Therefore, innovative ideas and daring proposals are full with this National Education Policy 2020. Even the selective entry of high quality foreign universities will instill or will inject what you call healthy competition into the higher education domain in India. I'm very sure. Then we are also interested in reducing what you call elitism and dualism in the school education. And I'm very afraid of what you call light but tight regulation. We don't know what will happen to this. And it should be free from what you call periodic inspections. And we have to follow the path of self-assessment and voluntary declaration. Whether it will work in the Indian context as things stand today, I'm afraid. Then definitely the new education policy 2020 talks about a single lean body. The bill is being ready. It will be presented in the month of September or so. That is HECI, Higher Education Commission of India. So that will unify all these things with 4 verticals. One is standard setting, funding, accreditation, regulation. There will not be any conflict of interest among these verticals. Then the National Education Policy 2020 is meant to provide an overarching vision and comprehensive framework for both school and higher education across the country. But remember, it's only a policy, not a law. Therefore, and moreover, education is in the concurrent subject of the Indian Constitution. Therefore, state governments and central government should join together to promulgate ordinances or other rules and regulations. Therefore, new rules of the game should be provided and all the players should play as per the new rules of the game. There are 100 action points emerging out of this new education policy 2020. Therefore, as Amit Khare says, and also the Ministry of HRD talks about the implementation will be done only in phases. Therefore, safety first, speed next. Then it is based on time, region, and types of institutions. With the institutes of eminence and central universities will be taking the lead. Then, of course, followed by state universities and other universities. Therefore, a word of caution is there. This is what I wanted to say in my opening remarks. Thank you, Mr. Lal Goel.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dr. P. Subramania, for giving the details about the new education policy. And he has mentioned that earlier we have to memorize to get that degree. And in the convocation, the university declare somebody that he or she is conferred with such type of degree. But now it is not the memory. It is what you want to learn. It's up to you. As well as now, according to the new education policy, no need of that heavy school bags, because they have changed the curriculum totally. They want the fun based thing, where there is a interest of the student is involved. And he has also mentioned that this time, for the first time, the opinions has been taken from everybody, all the stakeholders, and it took time to formulate this new education policy, which is a very, very positive thing, because all the stakeholders have given their positive or whatsoever opinions they wanted to give. And based on that, this new education policy has been formulated. Although there are many reservations in this new education policies, because it comes under education comes under the concurrence list, where the center and the state both have to decide about the implementation of this policy, and that they have to pass either the law or the ordinance whatsoever is required to start this policy implementation of this policy. But he is hopeful that with this policy, the employability will come, because right now, according to Professor Dr. P. Subramania, our education is to give the education for employment. But whether the student has become employable or not, that is not there. But with this new education policy, the student will become more employable, ultimately the benefit for the student. And he also mentioned now there will be a label free play field, where the international universities will also come. So there will be a competition. Hence, the standard of education will definitely go up. So thank you, Professor Dr. P. Subramania, for giving so much details about the new education policy. Now I would like to go to my next guest. He's Professor Dr. Mohlali Shantaram Shetty. Professor Dr. Shetty, after doing his MBBS from Government Medical College, Mysore, completed his MS Orthopedics from Delhi University in 1970. He was the head of the Department of Orthopedics and Director of Postgraduate Studies at Kasturba Medical College, Bangalore for 25 years. He took over as the first dean of K.S. Hegde Medical Academy, a post he held for 9 years. He was the first vice chancellor of Nitte University and now is the pro chancellor of Nitte University. He is the recipient of several foreign and Indian fellowships and was awarded FRCS honorary by the Royal College of Surgeons, England. He was AO Switzerland trustee for 6 years from 2003 to 2009 and the first AO Trauma Indian Council chairman. He was the Lions International Governor in 1993. He is the project director of Lions Artificial Limb Center for last 40 years and has provided more than 80,000 artificial appliances for the less able free of cost. He has more than 89 publications to his credit and 27 named orations and 272 invited lectures. He is an able administrator, an excellent accomplished surgeon, and a clinician sought after by patients. Welcome, Professor Dr. Shetty, to
Welcome.
our show. Uh,
Thank
Professor Dr. Shetty, you have heard what Professor Dr. P. Subramania said about the new education policy. And according to Professor Dr. P. Subramania, new education policies have plugged the loophole what was having our earlier education policy. Because earlier education policy was not a policy which motivate the students to study. Rather, it was for mugging or for memorizing the things and just to pass. So there's a lot of difference between the earlier education policy and the new education policy. And he mentioned that this education policy was formulated by taking the opinions from all the stakeholders from the India, so that new education policy was made in the consultations with all the universities, all the professors, those who are eminent persons who have some say in the education. And that's why he hoped that this education policy will definitely be beneficial for everyone. He also mentioned that now for the first time, the regional languages or the Indian languages were giving preferences over the old thing, which Britishers, when they started the education policy, they only gave the preference to the English language. Now, we would like to know about the new education policy from Professor Dr. M. Shantaram Shetty, please.
Good morning. Good morning to each one of my participants. And after Professor Subramania, my good friend, dealt in detail with the different aspects of the policy 2020 education policy, I have very little left on the inquisitiveness and the different points which he has mentioned. All that I would like to say is I would start with the famous words of Albert Einstein, one of our greatest thinker of mankind. Education the education should include inquisitiveness, creativity, and moral obligation of a particular student. That is the fundamentals of education. Unfortunately, what happened in India after the independence, as he has given some of the negative points, but I would mention that unfortunately we followed the British system. Though they changed remarkably, we did not change. Though there were two policies, as you rightly said, in 1968 and again 1986, we did not change. Just to give you two simple examples. I was in the 7th standard in St. Aloysius School. I still remember my history books and my history teacher telling that Robert Clive is a hero who won the Wandiwash War in Wandiwash and liberated the Missouri. That was nearly after 8 years after our independence. And again, I go back to my medical school, nearly after 10 years after that, the black drums in the physiology laboratory, which are shown to pit a frog to show the muscular action of the muscle, and a curve to show the muscular action in the black drums, which remained in our laboratory, in the physiology laboratory, even when I became the dean after nearly 25 years of medical science. This was what was happening. Even an MCI inspector who came as late as 1996 was counting the number of drums in a physiology lab rather than what is the importance of black drums. So this was the misery of our education system. You mentioned about Dr. Subramania mentioned about languages. Yes, languages. Right from the beginning, we have been fighting all around the country for languages in education. And though they implemented Hindi as a national language way back, we should have stuck on to one single policy. Just because there was an agitation, just because people did not want, we had one language, two language, three language in different states. We should have stuck on to one language, and language is the media. As Nelson Mandela rightly said, if you teach in English, and it will go to his head, which is a foreign language to a particular student. But if you teach in mother tongue, it goes to his heart. But at the same time, English is important, very important for international, to grow internationally and to grow in science. But at the same time, the importance of the local language, importance of the mother tongue should be given. That is the. I'm going to the negative points one by one. Then you come to the number of universities. Number of universities, we had to see the changing system from the original university. We stuck on to deemed university, we stuck on to central university, we stuck on to private universities. Today we have 945 universities with 127 deemed universities with 50 central universities. And 50 central universities were given not to a particular, it was given on the basis of the political influence of the particular state. And that is not the way education has to be. Education should be on when you give a university, it should feed the particular people of the country to bring about education. It is what our education policy should be, that knowledge should be changed into skill and skill into wisdom. That is the importance of education as such. And with this little background, coming to the education policy, I really welcome the 2020 education policy. They have dealt in detail what is the learning outcome. What is important? We have never tried the learning outcomes till now. what has the student learned? We produced MBBS, we produced Bs, we produced BComs, we produced without knowing from a university what is the outcome of that particular student. And this new policy has really brought in the outcome, whether the outcome has to be studied. And they have rightly divided into the three centers of education. One is based on the research orientation. One is based on the teaching orientation, and the third is autonomous colleges. So the research orientation is quite important. We in India, unfortunately, with so many graduates, so many PhDs, number of PhDs that we produce is enormous. But how many have got patency in our country? How many have publications in the renowned journals? That outcome we never looked into the possibility. That is so this policy that definitely puts into us to see how far we have progressed in any discipline. And number three is the holistic approach. What is important is holistic approach in our education system, which we have failed. There is no holistic approach at all. For an MBBS, I have gone through a medical science in medical. When I go abroad, when I come here and again go back, I see the changes in the holistic approach, the discipline part of it. That has to be taught. That has to be moral obligation. It is the obligation of a teacher. It is the obligation of a parent per se to see that his child or the teacher, his student is developed holistically. That is important in education. I'm happy that this education policy has brought in the holistic approach. And the other factor is training of the teachers. I have been a teacher for 40 long years. After I finished my post-graduation, worked somewhere here and abroad, came back to Mangalore as a teacher, as a lecturer in orthopedics. My head of the department tells me, next day you are going to take a class on Colles fracture. I did not. I was teaching my postgraduates, I'm an undergraduates a little in Delhi University, but I did not know the methodology of teaching. I did not know what to teach and what not to do. We all developed ourselves, our generation of people, especially the pre-independent era and the little post-independent era, which the PHU research in the US called us traditionalists. And then the baby boomers like Dr. Subramania and Dr. Agarwal and Dr. Abdul Salam, they were all achievers. But after that, the XYZ millennials did not have an idea as to what is education and how it is to be implemented. So this policy has definitely brought out that a teacher has to be trained. A teacher has to be trained. That BED policy is a good policy, 4 years. Plus, every teacher has to be trained on the methodology of teaching and how to, as I told you, how to bring about from knowledge into skill into wisdom. We do not want knowledge-oriented graduates of tomorrow. We do not want skill-oriented people alone. We want wisdom-oriented citizens who are knowledgeable, who are skillful, and with wisdom to carry on the traditions of this great country. Coming to research, lastly, research? It is unfortunate. It is unfortunate that research in our country has been on a snail's trot. Look into the number of publications. Look into even the best of the centers or IITs or the top class institutions of this country. How many patents they have? How many research-oriented, real? How many Nobel laureates have we produced? All the Nobel laureates from India, except Dr. C.V. Raman in science, no other has studied in India. They were either American citizens or citizens of other countries. They had to go across the sea to get a Nobel Prize. Why? This has to be done in our country. As a doctor, I know the number of patients which we have. Number of patients we have is so large, which we did not use for practical research. What is our record system? You go to any record system, whether it is MBA, whether it is MBBS, whether it is engineering, where is the record system to say and have an evidence to the world? This is our record, and this is our research, and has to be implemented. So this policy really brings, that is the first class, the institutions will be research oriented institutions. They have to give all the support so that our India becomes not only a teaching institution, the Indian universities become teaching institutions or autonomous institutions, but also institutions of excellence in research. Finally, in this also there will be regularity and accreditation system. Unfortunately, I should tell you this: the regulatory system and the accreditation system has failed us in many times. Unfortunately, corruption has crept in every sphere of life. This has to be stopped. And luckily, this education policy has brought in, very rightly, faceless accreditation, faceless regularity, where all the realities of that particular university is fed to the particular regulatory body or accreditation body, and they decide whether it has to be accredited or not. So finally, it is an I feel it is an excellent, but implementation is important. Implementation is important. Many policies come, but we do not implement fully. So, as Dr. Subramanian was rightly telling, there must be either a constitutional amendment or an amendment to bring about that this policy shall remain. Tomorrow, God forbid, the government won't change. But if the government changes, the next government will see that this policy is obsolete and next policies should come in. We would have failed those years. So what is important? Bring an amendment, and what is good about this particular policy has to continue, and it is to be implemented fully, so that the time will tell us that we have done something, our generation of people, and the government has done something for the betterment of education, betterment of knowledge, and betterment of wisdom in this country. Thank you very much, Henry.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Shetty. We have to do for the betterment of this generation by this new policy. Dr. Shetty welcomed this new policy outrightly. He said that what he has checked, when he was a student, he used to study those old things where they were highlighting the achievements of the Britishers, even when it was after 7 years of the independence. He says that in the medical colleges, there were the boxes where they used to do the practicals, and they were to show to the students. The regulators, the inspectors, they are only interested to count those boxes, but they never see what for the boxes are used. He says the education should be for motivational. It should be for that people should have that inquisite in himself or the herself for the education. And he says that about the language. He said that earlier the language, we don't have any particular policy for the language, and that is very sad. He said that Nelson Mandela has quoted once that if you teach in English, it will go to the head. But if you will teach in a regional language or the mother tongue, it will go to the heart. So he said that one has to take a decision, but only thing is English is required if you have to grow internationally. And he has also mentioned how the regulators failed miserably, the corruption, which was rampant, and what not happened, we all know. But he says this new education policy is very much welcome because it's a research. He has asked what is the status of today's IITs, how many patents they have, how many Nobel laureates we have created, except Dr. C.V. Raman, who got the Nobel Prize from India only. But all other Nobel laureates, they have to cross the 7 seas, go abroad, either study there or to take the research there, and then only they can have the Nobel Prize. Now, this shows that there was a flaw in our education policy. But according to Dr. Shetty, he is very clear that this policy is this policy of our new policy will definitely change because it is research oriented. They are giving the maximum preference to the research. But he's only afraid for one thing about the implementation. He said many changes have come earlier also, or the policies. What about the implementation? And when, if, until as the implementation is done, and according to him, it should be done by the constitutional up, constitutional amendment, then only this is possible to implement this policy uniformly. And that's why, according to Professor Dr. M. Shantaram Shetty, this policy is very, very good policy for everyone, for this generation and for the generations to come. Thank you, Professor Dr. M. Shantaram Shetty, for giving such a detailed analysis of yours about the new education policy. Now, I would like to go to our next panelist, Mr. We have to go to the new panelist now. He's
Dr. Agarwal or Abdul Salam.
yeah. Now I would like to go to our next panelist. He is Dr. M. Abdul Salam. Dr. M. Abdul Salam is the former Vice Chancellor of the prestigious University of Calicut, which is one of the largest and reputed university in India. He is PhD and postdoctorate from UK. As a renowned educationist, agriculturist, scientist, and education administrator, Dr. Salam, in a career spanning from more than 4 decades, from 1975 to 2020, across continents, has established a great reputation as a tireless academic and scientist, besides being recognized as one of the most authoritative voices in the area of higher education. He is an academician and scientist with great zeal and enthusiasm. He has published 153 research papers, 15 review articles, and 13 books in biological sciences. Welcome, Dr. M. Abdul Salam, on our show. Dr. Salam, you have heard what Professor P. Subramania has said and what Professor Dr. M. Shantaram Shetty has said. According to Professor Dr. P. Subramania, this policy is very good because this has formulated after taking the complete opinions of the stakeholders, and as well as it is going to create the employability among the students, not the only the to generate employment or to just to give them the education. Secondly, he has mentioned very clearly, because of this new education policy, because of the language thing, definitely the student will understand far better than what he was understanding earlier. And he has also mentioned one thing, that our education, which is existing education, is just to memorize the things, but the new education policy is not for memorizing, but rather you want to create something. It's a creative education policy. So you will have more inquisitive in yourself and you will be going for that. And that's why this new education policy is very good. What Professor Dr. M. Shantaram Shetty has said, that this new education policy is very good because it is giving more emphasis on research. And he has asked why there is no Nobel laureate in India, but he says that new education policy is giving lots of emphasis on research, and that is very important. Secondly, he said, because of the removal of the regulators, although he has not named, but yes, I can say the AICTE as well as UGC, this where there are lots of corruption, according to him, in the regulators. And that's why the quality or the standard of education was not up to the mark. And that's why we can't stand ourselves anywhere in the world. He says, how many PhDs have published their papers in the reputed international journals? All those things. How many has got the patents in their name? So according to him, this new education policy is a very, very good thing. We must welcome this. Now, we would like to know from you about the new education policy. Professor Dr. M. Abdul Salam, please.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
very good morning. I am indeed glad to be here and listen to Dr. Subramaniam, Dr. Shetty, and Shetty about the new educational policy. I also read the 66-page document. It's a brief, micro letter document submitted by Kasturi Rangan. I read it repeatedly. And, Dr. Subramanian and Dr. Shetty has brought out what exactly is the core of the policy. At the outset, let me say that let me congratulate Dr. Kasturi Rangan and his team, and also congratulate Honorable Prime Minister and his ministerial team for approving, first for forming the thought, and second for approving this awesome NEP 2020. While from bottom of my heart, while welcoming this wonderful policy, I consider this as a great boon, not only to the student, but also to the whole of the nation. I'm sure if this policy is implemented over a period of 10 to 15 years, it will create a great knowledge revolution and a social revolution, maybe a knowledge economy and economy, knowledge-centric economic revolution in the whole of our country. I was just looking at the education domain of our nation, how big it is. I got a data that, out of 138 crores, about 40 crores are students. That is 6.5 crores in the schools and 3.5 crores in the colleges. We have 40 crores of students, 935 universities, 1.5 million schools, 1.3 crores of teachers, over 45,000 colleges, all spread over 28 states and 8 union territories. This is the size of the system. The second point, as said by the previous speakers, in the concurrent list, education, the concurrent list, need the combined effort of the state and the center. The third one, I remember, it is a policy, not the law. Number the fourth point I keep in my mind while discussing is about the stakeholders, the students, the teachers, the parents, the central and state governments, the public at large. Now, I was looking at primarily on the main stakeholder, the student. I said it is the boon, and in this COVID pandemic ecosystem, the Prime Minister can give no other present, no other gift to the student community. This is a wonderful gift presented by our Honorable Prime Minister to the 40 crores of students and their parents, or I can say in the whole of the nation. Now then I was looking at, as an educationist, I was watching the quality, not only the, let me say the process of education from KG to PG, the products and all-time complaints raised by the different types of stakeholders, particularly in terms of the inferior quality of the process as well as the products. The purpose of this policy, it is repeatedly mentioned about developing very good human beings. What is that very good human beings? All explained by Professor Subramaniam and Professor Shetty in terms of knowledge rich, skill rich, value rich, personality rich, so many goodness which Indian culture envisage. Ultimately employable, globally fitting students, globally fitting personalities. That is the main focus of product development, product quality. Again, attaching lot of importance or the primacy to the childhood education. The need for attention at the childhood care is very much over there. Then what is interesting, other thing is, the attention to the quality of the teachers, attention to ensuring flexibility, attention for minimizing dropout rates. The whole, at the end, at the end of the document, it was mentioned that 6% of the GDP is going to be bestowed out of the 6% of the GDP compared to the present value of 1.7%. I just worked out what is this 6% of the GDP. Today, the GDP is what is available in the public domain is $3.202 trillion. When converted to Indian rupees and divided by 40 crores of students, to my surprise, I realized that this number is around 36,000 rupees per student, which is equivalent to 3,000 rupees per month, which is equivalent to 100 rupees per day for every student. That was, I mean, amazing, information that is there in the policy document. Now, again, in the early childhood care, it is clearly mentioned that, the students will be given, nutritious breakfast, midday meal, education for all from KG to 18, 4-year integrated PhDs, 4-year UG directly to PhD, removal of MPhil programs, every stage, student centricity in terms of, their freedom, eliminating stress. There will be no more, suicides by students due to failure and all. Enjoyable, engaged sort of training, keeping teachers at the center of the education, and, teachers as facilitators. And the system is envisaged to provide ideal soils, ideal fertile soils for the children to anchor, establish roots, germinate and grow themselves. Ultimately, instead of spoon feeding for a centered or a grade centered or mugging oriented learning to a knowledge oriented, thinking oriented, action oriented, value rich, skill rich, value rich human being, ultimately capable of serving for himself, serving for the nation, and capable of serving everywhere. I believe as an educationist, I was hearing a large number of complaints from all stakeholders in terms of product quality, the process, the infrastructure, the funding, the politics, so many things. I think Kasturi Rangan Commission has listened to all thoughts, all the complaints, all the deficits which we have been talking in the past, and there is a solution for that. It is a boon to the students, boon to the public. Everyone should accept it, approve it wholeheartedly. But as Dr. Shetty said, I have the concern. This is an awesome document, wonderful thought for the future, for the nation. But is it possible to implement it properly? There should be a strong political will for the implementation of this. I'm sure if Honorable Modi is there at the helm of affairs, it will go. But if there is a political, change in the coming years, what will be the fate? Documents are excellent. How best we can implement this? What about mobilizing, the interest or cooperation of the the diverse political system of the states? These are all certain challenges that can come up in the coming, while we go ahead with the implementation of this project. So I conclude by saying this is a boon. I wholeheartedly welcome this NEP 2020 with my only concern. Will we be able to implement this project and the programs as envisaged in NEP 2020?
Thank you, Dr. Salam, for welcoming this education policy. And according to Dr. Salam, it's a boon not only for the students, not only for the parents, for the entire country. And he has not minced any words to praise our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. According to him, this is the wonderful gift, the best gift during this COVID-19 position, which Prime Minister Honorable Modi has given to the entire nation. He has mentioned that in this report, which has been recommended or prepared by a Kasturi Ranjan Commission, they have consulted almost everyone, and after doing all details study, they succeeded and they have forwarded this report to the Prime Minister, who has given the consent and make it a policy. But because it is a policy, it is not a law. According to him, he is only worried about the implementation of this policy, because even if it is implemented, what going to happen if after a few years there will be a change in the government, and that time what is the fate? But he says that this policy is such a policy, if it will continue for next 10-15 years, the entire scenario of Indian education, the social as well as economic conditions of the country will change because of this policy. And he is very hopeful that this policy will be very, very beneficial for every stakeholder, whether student or the teachers, because there is a very good emphasis on the teaching, which even Professor Dr. Shetty has also mentioned, to how to educate the teachers. Because if the teachers are not knowing the process, how to educate the students, it is not possible. Whether they might be knowing the subject, but teaching is also an art. So that thing, both of them has emphasized that in this policy, there is a totally a new things, which is that to educate the teachers about the teaching. And that's why if it will be implemented, the product will be very good. That is the our students, the when they will come out, they will be, as per the Professor Dr. P. Subramania, employable. Thank you, Dr. Salam, for giving so much details, and for praising this uh, uh, new education policy in I will say in all the words what you have spoken is for the praise of this policy. Now I would like to go to our next guest. He is Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal. Dr. Agrawal is professor at NTPC School of Business. He is the former professor of Marketing, Innovation and Management, IIM Lucknow, XLRI Jamshedpur, and California State University, USA. He is president of Indo-Gulf Marketing Association. He is US Fulbright Fellow, Boston. He is also EFMD Fellow from Paris and British Council Fellow, London. In 2019, he was ranked among the top 251 most fabulous global education leader. Welcome, Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal, on our show. Dr. Agrawal, you have heard what Professor P. Subramania, Professor Dr. M. Shantaram Shetty, as well as Professor Dr. M. Abdul Salam has mentioned. And they have outrightly, they have welcomed the education policy. They have not left any word where anyone can feel that this policy is having any lacuna, except they are worried about the implementation. Dr. Salam has even mentioned that the 6% of the GDP, which is going to be spent for the education, works out to be 3,000 rupees per student per month. Although the figures have been calculated by Dr. Salam, I can't vouch for it. But yes, if he has calculated, it is must be right. And according to him, 100 rupees every day, every student on the education government is spending. It's a very, very welcoming move according to him. And I think not according to him, everyone should welcome if this is the thing for the education. Because in India, till now, we are not giving any importance to the education. I still remember when I was a student and when this ministry's name was changed from Education Ministry to HRD. Earlier, we were having three names which we used to know. One was the name of the President of India. The second was the name of the Prime Minister of India. And third, the name of the Education Minister of India. But today, the situation is, if you ask, nobody will tell you the name of Education Minister because there is no Education Ministry. And HRD Minister, many, I can say, more than 95% are not aware about who is the HRD Minister. They are only worried about the Home Minister, the Defense Minister, or the Finance Minister. But education, because without education, no one will come, whether it's a doctor, a medical, or politician, or any field. Education is important. And this new education policy has renamed the HRD ministry to the Education Ministry. I'm sure the Education Minister, whosoever will become, will be known to all the students from the childhood, that who are the President of India, the name of the President of India, name of the Prime Minister, and the third name he or she will remember is the Education Minister of India. Now, we would like to know from you about the new education policy. Dr. Mohan Lal Agrawal, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lal, and thank you very much for giving me the ring seat to listen to so many erudite vice chancellors and former vice chancellors. I also join them in welcoming the new education policy. However, I see it in three different ways. Number one, and number two, I would like to focus only and only on higher education, because that is the area where we all belong to and where we can make difference. So why do I welcome this education policy? I see this a revisit of the early years of 90s when Dr. Narasimha Rao and Dr. Manmohan Singh gave us what we called the second freedom of India, or the second independence of India in terms of economics, where he liberalized India and brought India to a point where we can say what we are saying about the Indian economy today. I would say that the new education policy is the third independence of India. And this third independence is because now the minds of India have been liberated. The education has liberated each and every person, each and every institution involved in the design and delivery of education. So this is the third freedom movement, or you could say freedom that has been won by India. Let me say one more point. If the Dr. Manmohan Singh and others, they were doing liberalization and globalization, then this education policy is doing something what is everywhere liked, and that is called globalization. Globalization means that you are bringing global thinking and local action. You are bringing the best in the world and also trying to adapt it to the country that we are in. So this is the global method of providing education in this country, and nobody can have objection. While somebody can have objection to localization, others may have objections to globalization, but globalization always find admirers because you are marrying the best of the two worlds. And that is this particular policy is all about. For instance, the very fact that the government has said that the top 100 universities of the world will be allowed in our country, this shows that there is a process of bringing globalization. At the same time, they are bringing the emphasis back to research, bringing research at the highest level, which means localization of that part is also there. So nobody can dominate the other person because we are bringing the best for the best of the country. That's why I call the second point. The third point in any policy reform is that you need to put money where your mouth is. And this particular education policy has brought in 6% of GDP of this country. Now imagine that tomorrow or by 225, when if we are lucky and we get this 5 trillion economy, then 5 trillion economy is 6% becomes almost like $300 billion. And $300 billion is actually the economy of the entire UAE today. The one UAE, that is Dubai, and this will become together as a part of that. So imagine the resources that will be there. That is a wonderful thing that you are breaking it down to each and every person or each and every student for each and every day. But if you take the aggregate figure itself, that aggregate figure is almost like equal to what we have foreign reserves in this country. So imagine the strength that foreign reserves are given, and imagine the strength the system will have when you are providing $300 billion. Now let me go to the higher education system. I see that this particular policy has brought changes at 4 levels. Level number 1 is the design. Level number 2 is the delivery. Level number 3 is governance. And level number 4 is autonomy. DDGA. Let me explain this design. The very fact that the master system has been made 1 year in accordance with the master programs throughout the world, which means that our students and their students both will have a synergy. We will be able to accommodate many people coming from outside, having done 1 year master program into our system. And our system students will also be able to go into their system because there is a parity of 1 year. I'm talking about master program. Let's take the bachelor program itself. The bachelor program has been made 4 years. Now, the very fact that you are saying multi-entry, multi-exit is a phenomenal thing, because what you have done, that you have suddenly catapulted a student from a receiver to a co-producer category. Who is a receiver? A receiver is, I give you, you take it. Who is a co-producer? A co-producer is one who engages you as a learner, as a student in equal capacity. And both of them produce things for the benefit of each other. So imagine that you have got a student who completes only 1 year, you are giving him a certificate. That particular person completes 2 years, you give him a diploma. When he completes the third, you give him a degree. And when you give the fourth, you give him a research degree. Now, what a wonderful thing that in a way you are making a person feel valued at different points of time, and therefore there is a very, very clear focus back on student as a customer, not as a receiver. The moment you make education accountable to the customer, like in any economic system, education system will also change, because you are taking into account the aspirations, expectations, and accountability to the students as a customer. And therefore that particular point will come through this particular policy. So now let's take the third thing. The third thing, which I believe has been left out, in my opinion, has been left out, but probably it will come with the passage of time. And I'm talking about this MPhil and PhD degree. Look at this MPhil. It has been abolished. No problem. I can understand that particular bridge degree was probably not providing the kind of value that it should have provided. But let's go to PhD as a result. In the case of PhD, no such multiple entry, no such multiple exit has been provided. Like, for instance, many of the IIMs and XLRI or any of the top management schools, they provide you something to go out if you are not able to complete your PhD in the given number of years. It is like almost like, I would say, a kind of a gambler that the winner takes all, the loser loses all. That is not the thing. In fact, this entire thing has been changed now in the case of PhD system. And I believe there should have been multiple entry system as well as multiple exit systems there also. For instance, if suppose you join PhD and you have done coursework for 1 year or 2 years, then probably you should also go out with some certification or the same credit bank, the credit bank which has been created in this particular system. That credit bank could also be used by a PhD student who couldn't work with one university but goes to another university. That particular credit bank of the courses will be used by the other university for your PhD program. As a result, PhD will become outcome-oriented, learning-oriented, productive, rather than at this particular point, the PhD is perhaps the least, I'm sorry to say this, exciting programs, even though everybody wants to do that. So this is the second. Third, if suppose a person has completed a couple of years and with due diligence, with a due examination, why can't we give MPhil to that person who had joined PhD but wasn't found suitable or couldn't do it for personal and professional reasons, and therefore that person could also get some kind of certification the same way as we are giving to the bachelors. While in the bachelors we are providing certification, at the PhD level, no such particular thing has been suggested. So this is one thing which I believe has left or has been left for reforms. Another thing, there is a very, very close coordination between industry and academics in the case of PhD. Why? Because we bring them back and we also, and there is a very, very close coordination between industry as well as the academics. And this new economic policy recognizes that. Not only recognizes it, actually it honors it. Not only it honors it, it values it. Now, this particular thing could also be done at the level of the PhD program. where the practicing the people could also be brought into this particular system or taken out of it. Right now in India, we have got two kinds of PhD, professional PhD and academic PhD. For me, this kind of distinction is a labored distinction. It is not a correct, distinction, and there is a very, very good area for reforms from that point of view also. So from higher education point of view, I will not go into other education, and I think my very, very learned colleagues have done that in greater detail. I would not go there. I would only go to the higher education. And in the higher education system, I believe that this particular government has done a phenomenal job. It has created an integration between academics and industry. At some point of time, we used to hear a very, very pejorative meaning, almost insulting sentence. And that insulting sentence was that those who do, those who cannot do, become teachers. I think this is one of the most pejorative things that we had ever heard. I believe now we can say that those who do, and those who know how to do it better, they become teachers. This is another way of changing yourself, the perception of the teachers at the higher education. So in my opinion, this is an excellent opportunity for us to go from a particular type of thinking to a global type of thinking. And that global or local type of thinking. And that global thinking is that create centers of excellence. Create centers of excellence around people. Do not create them around institutions, but create them around people. Provide them empowerment, provide them outcome, provide them responsibility, and provide them a very, very good money, where, as I said, resources, and then expect results. Then only research will happen. If we just give money to the university and university gives it the way it does, the money has always been coming. But have we created that kind of centers of excellence? Perhaps not. That is the point which I'm trying to say, sir. That create persons of that excellence, create centers of excellence around them, resource them, recognize them, honor them, and go forward. And in the case of the PhD, very, very big at this particular area for reforms. I once again, I thank you for this opportunity and share, whatever thoughts I had on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Agrawal, for giving your opinion. And he has also welcomed this new education policy. He said that India got independence in 1947, then the second independence India got in 1991, when our Prime Minister Narasimha Rao and Finance Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh liberated giving the economy a boost. And the third liberation or the independence we got in 2020, when our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has come out with this new education policy. And he said that there are so many things, but he just mentioned about the higher education. And he says that the 4 years thing, which is there, that multi-entry,
Sun
multi-exit
Premium
is a
refunds
very, very
sunflower
good
oil and
according
Sun
to him.
Premium
Because
refunds
he says
sunflower
that a
oil,
person who has done only 1
sunflower
year,
oil
he will
and
get a
Rohan
certificate.
Corporation
If he has done
presents
2, he may get
Indumati के
diploma.
स्वागत
If he has done
अनोखा
3
दिया
years course, he will get a degree. And if he has completed the 4 years, he will get a research
और
degree,
केल्तदा
something like that. So it is a very encouraging for the student. Otherwise, what happens, the students who are joining today in any of the course, and if he could not complete 4 years,
हेलो
he is nowhere, he is not
हेलो
getting anything. But he says there is more
हेलो
things are
हेलो
required, that is in the PhD level, where this same thing should be allowed
ऑडियो
for
ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತೆ
multi-entry and multi-exit. So
हेलो
then the
हेलो हेलो
PhD also person can
ಮತ್ತೆಂತಾಯ್ತು
do as and when he is free, or he is more concentrating, because sometimes it is not possible for a person to do the PhD in any stretch. And if he is not getting it done, so he's like a bonded labor.
हेलो
If you are
हेलो
completing your job,
हेलो
you are
हेलो
fine, otherwise you
हेलो
are out. So he says no, it should be reformed, which he hopes that it will be done. And he has calculated the GDP, although Dr. Salam has also calculated, but what he says, the 6% of GDP means that in 2025, hopefully we will have the 5 trillion economy. Then it works out with $300 billion. Then it means that it's a full economy of UAE. So he says, just imagine that much money when it will be spent on the education, what will be the outcome of the education. And lastly, he mentioned about the status of the teachers. He says There is a saying that if you do something, you will become something. If you don't do something, you will become a teacher. It is wrong. It should be with this new economic, in this new education policy. If you do something, you will become something. But if you do better than something, then you will become a teacher. And he says that new education policy has given full emphasis on the teachers and the research. And about the globalization, he has come out with a new terminology, that is globalization, where he says that the global knowledge to be merged with the local research because of the global institutes which are coming to India. Thank you, Dr. Agrawal, for giving your so much in details the perspective about this. Now, I would like to go to Professor Subramania. Although you people have given so much in-depth knowledge, there is no question to ask, but I have to ask some question. My first question is to Professor Dr. P. Subramania. In 34 years, I am taking from 1986, the last reform, second reform of the education policy. We were unable to achieve 30% gross enrollment ratio, GER. We are at 26.3%. Do you think we will be able to achieve it after the implementation of the NEP? And in this policy, as you all have mentioned, that it's going to be 50%, not even 30%. Do you think, is it possible, or it is like a fairy tale, or just a something which has been shown to the community or to the nation so that we are happy, but whether it is achievable, because our other panelists have mentioned about the implementation part. So first thing is whether it is going to be implementable properly, fully, and if it is implementable, whether this target will be achieved or not. Professor Dr. P. Subramania, please.
Yeah, as you rightly observed, gross enrollment ratio, GR, is definitely a much sought after thing in school education and also in the higher education. The new education policy 2020 talks about 100% GR in school education by 2030. Then 50% GR by 2035. It means after 15 years in higher education. This 50% GR, because now around it may be 26.5% or so. So this 50% GR by 2035 means after 15 years is definitely hopeful and realizable, because 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, 15. One set of students, they will come out in this stream. That way, it's a very realistic expectation. But another one is 100% GR in school education by 2030. It is a bit doubtful, but I don't say it is impossible. It is definitely achievable, because I know it is a smart objective of the new education policy 2020. When I say smart, SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Therefore, any government would have done the same thing. It is easier said than done. I know, as a responsible person, I know, but it is inevitable. You have to say, and you have to strive very hard to reach this goal. Arise, awake, and stop not until the goal is reached. That's sure, 100%. Even though it is difficult, but it is not impossible. Because collective efforts are required. Collectively, we can do wonderful things. Therefore, this avowed objective of new education policy 2020 is definitely achievable, but simply we should not close our minds and sit tight or sleep over this matter. We have to muster the support of everybody. It is not just the political will. What we require is not even bureaucratic will, but more importantly, what we require is national will to make things happen. That is definitely our Sri Narendra Modi ji will definitely do it along with his wonderful team. So that therefore we can make things happen.
Thank you, Professor Dr. P. Subramania. And according to him, it is achievable, although we have to try hard. And he says it's not only the political will, not only the bureaucratic will, but the nation's will. And if it will be done, implemented properly, it will achieve, because in 15 years, the new set of students will come. So in 2035, we will be able to achieve in the higher education the 50% target. And in 2030, 100% of the primary classes. He said it's a doubtful, but it also achievable if our will is there. Thank you, Professor Dr. Subramania, for giving this answer very categorically. Now I would like to go to Professor Dr. Shetty. Dr. Shetty, you are a renowned doctor, everybody knows. And you know the education system in India and abroad. And you also know that our doctors in India are doing very well abroad. You also know that there is a basic difference in India as far as the very well abroad MBBS course, the way of training, the apprenticeship, the internship, which is like in UK. If you see how they to get a postgraduate degree, how much work they have to do, then they have to become the postgraduate, even to become a general practitioner, and even for doing the super. Now, my question to you is, how will apprenticeship, internship will be implemented as part of the curriculum when there are few jobs in market in India? Not only medical, I'm talking of everything with this new education policy.
No, you rightly pointed out, is there a difference between the Indian education system as far as medical science is concerned, and either in UK or Australia or in United States? First of all, let me point this out to you. The NHS system in United Kingdom is almost 50% of them are Indian doctors. 50% are Indian doctors. If Indian doctors are not there, their NHS will fail. You go to United States, many of our big people go to United States for their treatment, either in Sloan Kettering or in Mayo or in Anderson or in various, or in Texas for a heart surgery. But majority of the surgeons even in these reputed hospitals are Indians. So the training is not at fault. It is the discipline point of it. It's the discipline point of it, which I think we should inculcate in our younger generation of doctors. And that love and compassion for the patients, which is important. When you go to UK or when you go to States, when you go to Germany, the theater starts at 7:30 in the morning and ends at 7. Nobody leaves the theater or the hospital. Whereas here, even if the chief comes at 7:30, slowly we creep in people, even for a class which is at 7:30, slowly students will creep in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes late, or even for surgery. That is not discipline. What is important is discipline-oriented education, especially in medicine. You will have to be disciplined, and you will have to undertake. If you see in your patient God or your own brother, you can do no harm. That should be inculcated in your medical education. That love for your work. Many of them are put to medicine either because father wants or an industrial wants his son to be a doctor. No, unless that love for that particular education, that I want to become a doctor. And when I was the dean, I was asking 100 students who are admitted, why do you want to become a doctor? The invariable question is, I want to do social work. That is hypocrisy. I told the students it is hypocrisy, because unless they are oriented and trained, it is the teachers who make a difference. They should be role models, not just teachers. And they should be mentors. And whether it is medical education, engineering, or the dental, or any education, it's the teachers who make a difference. So rightly, this policy has brought in a lot of changes in teacher training and teacher orientation and teacher program, and to bring about that national love and national fervor. That is important in education. If I love myself, I should love my brother, I should love my neighbor, I should love my patients, I should love my nation. And that is the way we should go forward in any education system. And I congratulate Dr. Kasturi Rangan especially, whom I know personally is a great person, and Modi ji for bringing out this. Let us implement it and show to the world that India has arisen as a knowledge-bound nation for tomorrow. Thank you.
India has arisen as a knowledge-bound nation for tomorrow, says Professor Dr. Subramaniam, Dr. Shantaram Shetty very, very clearly. And he says that if you go to NHS UK, you will find 50% of the doctors, Indian doctors. Even if you go to the top institutes of USA, Mayo Clinic, etc., you will find many of the surgeons from India. So the training part in India is not poor. The training is very good. The only weakness is the discipline. And this discipline is because our teachers are not trained for that. And the teachers, if they are, because they are the role model, if they are trained, then the discipline will be there. And according to him, this new education policy is going to train the teachers not only to educate, how to educate, and in that definitely the discipline will also come. And he has also mentioned that those who are becoming doctors, if they are not having love for the patients, if they are not seeing the God in them, then it's of no use. And he says across, whether it's a doctor or engineer or anyone, you have to love your nation. You have once, you love your son, you love your brother, you love your neighbor, you love your nation, then this policy, which is creating that love, and he says, because he knows Dr. Kasturi Ranjan personally, he has done a great job, and in turn, our Prime Minister Honorable Modi has done a good job. According to him, this education policy will definitely bring India on top as far as education is concerned. Thank you, Professor Dr. Shantaram Shetty, for giving such a good reply for the question. Now I am coming to Dr. M. Abdul Salam. Dr. Salam, this policy has spoken for everything. Now, I would like to know whether there is any reference about the coaching institutes, because in today condition of education is the biggest education, I will not use, but there is a word which media uses, mafia, is the education institute, the coaching institutes, which are running, which are their business total gross turnover is far more than the colleges. So we would like to know what is the future of the coaching institutes from in this new education policy. Dr. M. Abdul Salam, please.
Yes,
This is
thank
a
you for
question
the.
I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Because you have told very categorically that you have studied this new education policy repeatedly. So I am sure that you might have seen this, whether this point is taken care or not. Dr. Abdul Salam, please.
Thank you very much for this question. One of the salient highlights of this policy is that, the money making coaching institutes will go, that will have no standing hereafter. We are not encouraging students to go for such sort of coaching and, competitive examination for admissions and all that will go. No, that is why, very often I was getting a feel that, if I am getting Kasturi Rangan very close, I'll give him a very warm hug and also a very warm, loving hug for, making it so student friendly. Another place it is clearly mentioned, private institutes, they will be encouraged for quality. They will be given autonomy, encouraged if quality, with a capping on exploitation, capping on fee. Everywhere Kasturi Rangan Commission was focusing on student friendly, student comfortizing, programs, so that, the intended objectives intended at the beginning is achieved. Now, let me also share my view about the first question to Subramania. You said about the possibility. I just cautioned you about the political will, but I am very sure if a strong administration is there, this program is primarily centrally funded, centrally focused, centrally governed. So if there is a strong administration like Narendra Modi ji for another 10 years, this will definitely work. The political will, the need is very much known. The benefits are very much known. is technically feasible, economically viable also, and the rewards are also fantastic. It is not impossible task, possible tasks, but my worry is the diverse politics spread over states in different political groups, vote centric, vote bank centric politics. I don't know how they will digest these principles. They may think that this is going to be a benefit for the central government. Why should we stand with them? These sort of petty thoughts perhaps may cause failure to the implementation of the program. That's it. And the first question I repeatedly say, the money makers, the bloodsuckers will go. They have no role.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Salam. According to Dr. Salam, the money suckers will have no role because he has given, according to him, because it is this new education policy is a student friendly, and there are no targets, no competition is such that the students will be going for the coaching, what inference I could gather from his talks. So it means the student, if he will study properly, no need of that much burden which he used to have earlier. So he need not to go to the coaching class. But then what is going to happen to the cities like Kota, we don't know. But yes, it will be a very, very great relief for the students because they will be relieved. They will not be studying right from the morning to night with a heavy school bags and school coaching classes, which is a very, very big burden on the parents also. And according to Dr. Salam, this is achievable because of the very good policy and because of the good revenue model in this, that is the GDP 6% to be spent. Thank you, Dr. Salam, for giving your reply. Now I am asking the last question to Dr. Agarwal. Dr. Agarwal, you have used the word globalization. Now, recently, I think about 7-8 years back, there was a policy when the government has tried to bring all the top universities in India, whether it is Stanford or Cambridge and Oxford, and that drive could not give any result because they have not found India is suitable place for their university campus in India. Now, what is there in this new education policy which will change their mind set and they will come and set up their campus in India, as you have mentioned very clearly that it is going to be a globalization. But if the leading, because this new education policy says the top 100 universities, it means the top universities, earlier they were tried, they could not come. So first thing is, what will be the criteria of those 100 top universities? And if whatsoever, if we know those names, which are very much Oxford, Cambridge, Stanford, MIT, etc. But when they have already decided not to come, what is there in this new education policy which motivate them to come to India now? Dr. Mohan Agarwal, please.
Thank you, Dr. Lal. You see, the last part of your question is very easy, that what will be the criteria? Because now we have got number of global ranking models. And on the basis of those global ranking models, we can invite the top universities. If we are taking research as our focus, then there is a QS ranking based on research also. And therefore, we can take those universities based on their research record and bring them to India. The other question of yours was very, very important, that why this particular policy did not succeed earlier, and therefore what is that have changed, which it will become successful now. You see, any top university goes to a new market for 3 reasons. Number one, that there is a demand potential. Number two, there is an enabling environment. And number 3, there is a environment of appreciation of what they are doing. In all the 3 areas, the universities, top universities, were not sure that they were going to get that. And I am also personally involved with many university projects of foreign nature who are struggling even to get basic approvals done. So while we wanted is, I'm sorry to say this, a wonderful fighter plane from France, but we wanted it to fly as per the MiG-21 situation, MiG-21 conditions. That these are the conditions which you will do. Why? Because you will kill our local universities, our local system, and as a result, we will be dominated. You know, like when global retailers like Walmart and all they come, then the local retailers start shouting, start crying, start lobbying, so many things that they do. There is a substance in their opposition, there's no doubt, but entire substance doesn't exist with them. Why? Because this is what we call protectionism. And this protectionist policy does not allow a global organization to come and flourish the way they want. They don't want to just come, they want to flourish. So that is the answer that that particular thing is. So as a result, this new economic policy is providing both hands free, both legs free to the top 100 institutions to come and set up. So rather than running a 100-meter race with one leg tied or with one hand tied, they are saying you're free, move it, because we have taken you based on that particular consideration. In the meantime, what we could have done, I will tell you one thing, which we, again, I'm sorry, policy does not mention. I know Dr. Kasturi Rangan is a great man, and he has mentioned so many wonderful things, and all my fellow members are talking about it. I join them. But there are certain lacuna also. Number one lacuna is that we do not have in higher education global teachers teaching. They come here only as visiting faculty or for particular course or for particular region. Why we have not been able to attract them? Why do we have only NRIs coming back to India and then teaching and saying I was teaching in Harvard or Texas or this and that, and therefore I'm teaching in top IIM or some other kind of thing? Why not non-Indians, white people, black people, brown people, not Indians, but other people, they are also invited and taught? I think this will create a very, very new culture of research, because these people are research people rather than teaching people. And we have to combine that kind of enabling situation. So this is the second point. The third point, and I'm warning all higher education system universities here on the basis of my management knowledge, that they are now in for a very, very difficult time. And what is that difficult time? Because of the multiple entry and multiple exit system. Today, once a person joined, he or she was taken for granted to graduate from that university. Now you have no longer that assurance. Now a student can bank his credits, leave your university within 1 year and go to another university or go to yet another university, which means all vice chancellors, pro-vice chancellors and administrators now are put on notice that all these students, your goal will have to be from recruitment to retention, not just recruitment to graduation, but recruitment to retention. The same kind of competitiveness are now in for the, and therefore what will happen if you're not up to the mark, if you're not up to the standard, if you're not up to the expectations of the students will leave within 1 year and they are entitled to that certificate or diploma or degree or research degree, as I mentioned to you. So a person may take a diploma here, but will take a research degree somewhere else. That's the point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Agrawal. And according to Dr. Agrawal, the earlier the conditions were not that feasible for those universities, the global top universities. And he has given an example that you want to a Rafale plane, but you want to fly it as a big. According to him, they were not given a free hand to set up their university campus here. But now in this new education policy, they have given the free hand, so then they can come and set up their universities. Now the question, I don't know, I will get the answer. Now we don't have time, but still there is a question: what will happen to Atmanirbhar Bharat when we are bringing those global universities to India? What will happen to our own universities? Although he has mentioned one thing very clearly, he says that is a difficult time. In my opinion, no, it's not a difficult time. Rather, it's a challenging time for the universities, that they will introspect themselves and they will raise their standard of education So then they can retain the students because of the multi-entry and multi-exit thing. Now, I would like to go for the last segment of our program, although the time is short, so I want you to be brief. That is Professor Dr. P. Subramania. What are your suggestions to the government and advice to the public, the students or the parents?
Yeah, to cut the long story short, there are certain difficulties. I'll consider them as challenges. Some of the proposals require legal changes. Others require funding. It means budget allocations. Then there is a process of converting affiliated colleges into degree granting autonomous institutions. This is neither a child's play nor Sunday gardening. It requires budget allocation and longer time. Then the ministry feels that an increase in government funding of education to 6% GDP will be sufficient to cover the financial implications of NEP 2020. But in the past, I remember such an increase in funding has been proposed but not achieved, because right now we are having only 4% of GDP. But anyway, then making mother tongue the medium of instruction till class 5. Very, we have to be careful, because this depends upon the sentiments of the state governments concerned. Then I told you already, national will is required, not even political will or bureaucratic will. But luckily we have PM Narendra Modi ji and his team. We are very optimistic. Then implementation is the key. We have to walk the talk, no doubt about it, no mid option. Then orchestration of efforts, sure. Then what we require is not IQ now, because adversity quotient, because right now, because of COVID-19, we are passing through rough patch in our lives. Therefore, we have to strengthen our students' mind in terms of adversity quotient. Then you have to tell our students, look here, you have to earn your livelihood and manage your life, because higher education institution will not just prepare the students for a particular job or even career, but for their lives. That's important. Then they should enjoy the process happiness. And finally, we have got the proper ingredients and the right recipe, but what we make of it depends on us. Therefore, enemy always lies within. Anyway, I'm very sure sincere attempt to break free from the shackles of the colonial past as we go through this NEP 2020. And I appreciate human development should always precede human resource development in India. That's why early childhood care and development is given top priority. And demographic dividend should not become demographic disaster. Therefore, there is no other option unless we implement it with the putting our body, mind, and soul in one place. Therefore, finally, the word of caution to the government and the public at large is policymakers and administrators have been struggling unsuccessfully with some of these issues for years. Therefore, let us not take these things very lightly. That is what my word of caution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dr. P. Subramania, for giving your advice and the caution. And I'm sure the government will take, and the public will also take your advice and caution in religiously in the true sense. Now, Professor Dr. M. Shantaram Shetty, your suggestions to the government and advice to the public.
As was rightly discussed, education is the very element of life. You educate a particular person, a family, the whole nation can be educated. So this education policy should lead us to the path to be firm in our faith, sustained in our confidence, and in the will of God and promise of young men and women, and the nation as a whole, and the government, to bring out positiveness in this education policy. That is so let us bring about a research-oriented, knowledge-oriented, and compassion, love-oriented society for the future.
Thank you, Dr. Shetty. Definitely the society will want all these things, and we hope that this new education policy will fulfill all these things, what you have mentioned. And now, Dr. Salam, what are your suggestions to the government, if any, and advice to the public?
Yes. The most important thing is, while I was in 2010, we started preparing 2020 documents. 10 years have gone quickly. So my point is, time is precious. You may reach 2030 very quickly soon. Time is important. So realize that and immediately transform the policy document to legal document, legal framework, without wasting time, number one. Number two, prepare a detailed roadmap up to micro level, day bar, what is to be achieved, day bar achievement for different bodies, form the different bodies with apt people, right people, fix responsibilities for all the stakeholders on a timeline. And I want that milestones, responsibilities, timelines, everything, the exact roadmap is to be published for the public to know. The public should know. The government want to do some complete something by September or December. Whether this is done, whether these bodies are filled with apt and right people who can execute the responsibility, as they said, equity, justice, and all that, whether the appointments are on par with what they say in the document, whether we are selecting the best people, the right people. And I wish the roadmap and the milestone should be published for the knowledge of public to know what these people are doing. We don't know. The policy document, after sometimes somebody will talk about the policy document.
So
Once upon a time.
So Dr. Salam, yes, your suggestion is that we should they should publish all those details in public domain.
In public domain.
Okay.
You should know, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Salam, for giving your suggestions to the government. And now my last panelist, Dr. Mohan Agrawal, your suggestion and advice. Please be brief. We have already exceeding the time.
Totally. I understand the time. Only one suggestion, since we are moving into the research orientation and higher education, I'm focusing only on higher education. That in higher education, if research orientation has to be brought in, then the funding and accountability has to be much more democratic and much more inclusive and much more accountable. In other words, it just shouldn't go to the IITs or public universities. It should also go to private universities. It should also go to state universities, and accountability should be seen much more transparently and with much more timeline. That is all suggestion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agrawal, for giving your suggestion about the accountability. So today you have seen that the new education policies have been welcomed by everybody, the vice chancellors, the vice chancellor, or the former vice chancellor, or the educationists, and they are saying that this is an education policy which we require very badly in India. The only word of caution is about the implementation, and I am sure that if it will be implemented fully, then definitely the future of our students very bright, as all our panelists has agreed. And with this, the day will come when we can very well say that India is the global leader in education front also. Today's program, which has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Saroka News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring every day something new for you to learn and to get the alignment. And tomorrow, the media conference with Lal Goel is, the topic is the COVID-19 impact on sports. And we have a very sports person with us, and that is Mr. Amico Piperno. He was a former Indian tennis champion, and he is the Indian Davis Cup coach for 10 years. Then we have Mr. Surinder Khanna, former international cricketer India. Then we have Mr. Vijay Lensi. He is the former Indian badminton champion, and he is the Masters world champion currently of over 40. Then we have Wing Commander Arjit Ghosh. He is the former Ranji Trophy cricketer, coach and match referee, and former Secretary Air Force Sports Board. And we also have Mr. Grant Jensen, provincial cricketer and coach, multiple Ironman finisher, Cape Town, South Africa. So please tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. Thank you very much, all our guests, Professor Dr. P. Subramania, Professor Dr. M. Shantaram Shetty, Professor Dr. M. Abdul Salam, and Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal for joining our program. And thank you all viewers for viewing this very informative, educative program on new education. policy. Please tune in tomorrow for the media conference with Lal Goel at 11 a.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you.